Hey guys, okay, so I'm just editing this video and I wanted to, before I even get started with it, I honestly just wanted to put out this caveat that I am bringing you like an entire week of cooking from scratch with my family. However, like, just make sure that you are taking this where you're at. I always recommend like to push yourself and to try new things, but do not compare yourself. We are all in different situations. We have different time commitments. We have different skill levels. So if you need to like go get some broth from the store out of a canister, like go do that. Make the rest of the soup. Don't be crazy. Like, I want you guys to try new things, but I don't want you to be so intimidated or so overwhelmed that you do not start. So I hope that this provides some inspiration for you. And I don't know. I love making these videos. I hope you like them too. If you do, please let me know in the comments, because sometimes I feel like I'm talking to myself, and I always love when I hear from you guys because it just makes me feel like I'm putting stuff out there that is actually helpful. And if there's things that you want to learn that I haven't addressed in videos, please let me know, because I want to be helpful. With that said, let's get started. I'm trying a little bit of a new video format, so let me know how you like it. Yeah. Thanks always for watching. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to prep is the chicken broth and the chicken that's going to go into our soup. So my son's been feeling under the weather the past day. My daughter seems to be catching it, and my husband and I too. So I'm trying to get ahead of it, make some bone broth, get some really good nutrients in our body. So I'm going to make 2 soups this week. One is going to be chicken gnocchi creamy, kind of like, you know, the Olive Garden dupe, but a little bit different. And then some cream of chicken wild rice, because that is like my absolute favorite soup. So basically what I do to make my chicken broth is nothing really crazy. All I do is take 1 chicken. So I'm going to get some scissors and cut this up. And I'm really glad I put this in a separate bag, because the juices seem to have gotten a little yucky in here. I'm going to have to sanitize my countertop after this. So I just cut it open. I put it right in there. Nothing crazy. You could roast this in the oven if you wanted, if you had a little extra time. I'm sure it would give it a lot of really good flavor. A lot of times I'm just trying to do what will save me a little bit of time and still get the job done. So the Instant Pot works great. I don't have a big enough Instant Pot where I could put 2 at a time. I think it'd be a little bit too full. So I just do these in batches. I'm going to put it in there for about 25 minutes. I'm going to cover it with water, salt, pepper, throw about ½ an onion in there, and that's going to be the first round of broth. We're going to take some of that out and use it for the soup. I'm going to pick the chicken, and then my daughter's playing in the water over there. I'm going to pick the chicken. I'm going to save the bones, and then we're going to put them in for a second time with the remaining broth and make more of the bone broth, and that's going to get really good nutrients. So we're going to get that started, and I will come back for the rest. A new outfit. So I like to put a decent amount of salt because it's going to go into the broth as well, and it gives the chicken a lot of flavor. That might have been a little too much salt though. And then some pepper too. And I don't know how many cups. I have to say this is probably about 12 cups, because I think this is what goes into my coffee maker. So this doesn't cover the chicken completely. Pressure cook for about 25 minutes. So the next thing that I'm going to chop is going to be some beef bone broth. So I picked these up at a local Mexican market that we have by us. I've had a hard time finding these at any local grocery store, so if you are looking for these, you don't have a local butcher that can sell them. Because even I've gone to some local butchers and they don't sell soup bones. So I got these, but you can find them possibly at like your local like maybe Mexican or Asian market. They might have them there. Before I cover them in water. I'm going to roast them a little bit. So I'm going to just put them on a sheet pan. I'm actually going to grab some parchment paper. So I'm just going to put this down. So I'm just going to arrange these. And like you can see, there's really nice like collagen in there, and that's where a lot of those nutrients are going to be. So I'm just going to throw this in the oven, 425, about like 30 minutes or so. And then we'll transfer it to a stock pot and add a little bit of veggies too. Alright, so while this was cooking, I ran out to the store. So it already depressured, the pressure released by it naturally. So I'm just going to get out a bowl. And I'm going to take the chicken out so that it has some time to cool off a little bit before I pick it. I find it's a lot easier to pick it when it's not like piping hot. And we're not in a rush to get this chicken in like soup or anything right now, so we have a little bit of time. I'm just going to use some tongs here. And like as you can see, this chicken is just like falling apart at the bone. It's going to be so tender. And the broth in here is like very rich and dark. I'm excited to put it in my soup. So I'm gonna just go ahead and dump this off. Take my oven mitts because this is gonna be pretty hot. I'm gonna put some fresh water in there and put in the second chicken so that we have two broths going, and then we'll end up kind of combining them at the end. And then I'm also going to go ahead and make some pancakes for both this breakfast today, and I'm going to make a few extra for the week so we have them in hand if my Tyler decides that he wants pancakes last minute. Right, so I'm going to make some pancakes. I am using the Kodiak protein pancakes. I actually got this Kernza one, which is like a special flour, and so I'm going to give that one a try. I'm going to put some protein powder in here. I melted a whole stick of butter. I'm going to put in, I'm probably going to make, Joe, should I make, how many cups should I make? How many cups do you make? Yeah, dude. How many cups do you should make?
I usually make 1 or 2. Here's just how to make these pancakes. Wow, they're so good. So, if I do 2 cups, okay, so one serving of this. 1 cup of mix, 1 cup of typically oat milk, but otherwise I'll do milk, 1 egg, 2 sticks of butter, 1 scoop of protein powder.
So we're going to use 2 cups. Alright, so we really like Jocko's protein powder. I'll link it below. You can find it on Amazon. I really like it because it doesn't have a lot of like BS in there from an ingredient standpoint. It's a pretty clean protein. Plus, I really like Jocko's brand in general, like especially if you're a guy. They don't have a ton of girls clothing, but my husband gets all of his jeans from there, and they're all made in the U.S. like completely. Like materials are sourced in the U.S., all that is really awesome. So I think that's great. So I'm going to put 2 scoops in here, make it more of a protein pancake. And if you want an actual pancake recipe, because I do have one, I have one on my channel, I'll link it below. But like I said, my husband really likes the Kodiak protein pancake mix, and so he, as you can see, is the pancake connoisseur in this house. So he is definitely the one to dictate what kind of pancakes we make, because he makes them really well. So we just stick to that. So I'm going to do a cup of milk, and then I'm going to do a cup of water, and we're going to mix that up. And we like a thinner pancake too, so This is definitely going to produce more of like a thinner flapjack than like that typical fluffy, buttermilk pancake that you might be used to. And so, like, as you can see, this is a pretty runny batter. And so that's kind of where we like it. I'm gonna grab my ladle. It looks like it might be a little too hot. We'll test out our first pancake. See if we can cool the pan down a little bit. As you can see, I did take the bones out of the oven. We'll go back to that in a little bit when I start to get that ready. All right, test out our first pancake. Hopefully I didn't do too hot. I have a tendency of being very impatient with pancakes, which is why my husband's way better at it. He's way more patient than me. So we'll see if this is too hot or not. And like, this is just realistic about what cooking at home looks like. A lot of times I am doing like multiple things at once, while also, being a mom, and luckily I have an awesome husband. We're gonna see if this covers it. I think we might need a little more water. Let's get the bones covered to this ridge here. Alright, so I had a little bit of garlic from yesterday, and then I have this small plate too. Usually I try to keep a larger bag, but we did just move back a couple months ago, so I haven't had time to really get the big stock of frozen veggies that I usually like to have. But we're going to go ahead and throw that into this beef stock. And I just, when I'm cooking, when I have scraps, I just go ahead and cut those up, put them in a bag in the freezer, and then they're ready for when I want to make stock. So I'm going to cover that. You know what, I'm actually going to grab some apple cider vinegar as well. Okay, so this apple cider vinegar is going to help extract a lot of the nutrients from those bones. So I just do about a tablespoon in the beginning. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it up higher. And then once it starts to boil, I'm going to turn it down low.
Fat wheels, always fighting crime. Fat wheels, it'll turn on a dime.
So one other thing that I've been trying to do is drink some of Element electrolytes while we are not feeling really great. So I really like the taste of this over some of the other kinds of like hydration drinks, but I really like the salty flavor. We do like lemon lime, but there's a bunch of other really good flavors in there. But I've just been trying to drink that so I stay hydrated because I have a really bad time drinking water. The thing we're gonna make is homemade gnocchi. Now I have this mashed potatoes that I made the night before. This is actually, I'm gonna just kind of mash this down so that I can evenly add some of this egg and flour into the mixture. So we're gonna just do egg yolk here. I'm gonna put the egg white aside because we're gonna make some egg whites later on, either today or tomorrow, whenever we get to it. And I'm just gonna put the egg yolk in here. And I think gnocchi is kind of similar to pasta where it's like you kind of just go by eye. I don't have an exact measurement for you, but I think that is one of the really good things about learning how to cook from scratch is like kind of just doing things by trial and error and figuring out kind of what works well for you. And because everyone's going to like a different consistency too. You might like a tougher gnocchi, you might like a little bit more of a pillowy gnocchi. So I'm going to start off with and I'm just going to kind of like fold this in, and we're just going to kind of make this into a dough. See, it's a little bit more. Okay. A little bit more flour in here. This into, I think, 5 pieces. It's kind of a lot of dough here. And I'm going to put a little bit of flour down here on my work surface. just going to kind of roll out my dough into a little bit more of a cylinder shape. Now, I am no gnocchi expert, and I need to remember that we're never going to make perfect things all the time, but I guarantee you it's probably going to taste way better than what you buy in the store. An onion and some garlic, like probably at least 7 to 8 cloves to color and caramelization of our veggies before they go boiling in the soup. I just feel like it adds a little bit more flavor texturally into the soup. And remember, save these for your soup. Go ahead and throw the onions in the pot here. Really quick. And one thing that I actually recently learned is you don't really have to like jump off of it. You can just kind of go up and down. Treat. Also, you can throw your carrot scraps right into your soup too. These are organic, so I'm really not concerned about like the chemicals on them. So I don't mind throwing it right into my soup at all. This is hot. In half here, and then depending if it's thicker than this, I'd probably cut it in half again. But I'm just going to cut it here, probably like in thirds, and then dice them this small. I like to make mine smaller because my kids do eat these foods sometimes. Depending on the day, my baby's actually really great about eating foods. She hasn't gotten into her picky phase yet. And so I like to make them small so that I make sure that they get nice and cooked and that they're a good size for her to eat. So I'm just going to chop all of these up and add them to the pot. And then we are waiting to add this garlic in until we're almost ready to add in the broth because we don't want it to burn. Chopped up all this garlic, and needless to say, this is going to be a garlicky soup. But garlic is known to be helpful when you're sick, and so I am just trying to put everything I can in here to help us get better quicker, because as the day progresses here, I am starting to feel sicker and sicker, so I'm just trying to get this done as quickly as I can here. So likely I think we're only going to get to the one soup today, but I do want to get some bread started. I'm going to have to pick this chicken here so that I can get this bowl going. So I'm going to take this chicken out, get this bowl clean, and we'll start to get some bread going. Alright, so I'm actually going to get the broth here in the bowl because the garlic is starting to get fragrant. So I don't want it to burn. I'm just going to add in a little bit of broth here. So, and look at all of these really beautiful veggies here. Just looks so tasty. Okay, so I'm going to pour in some of this broth here. Ideally I would strain it a little bit, but since I got baby in one hand, I'm just going to make do. It's okay if we get a little bit of chicken parts in there. So we are just going to give it a nice stir. And I'm going to let it come up to a boil. Probably add a little bit more broth here. We are going to add some cream too a little bit later. We're going to add our gnocchi and let it simmer. So I'm going to go ahead and get some sourdough bread started. I am pretty not fussy at all. I don't measure much with my sourdough. And then I'm going to thin it out with some water. And I like to add the water first because especially if I have a thicker sourdough starter like I do today, it helps thin it out a little bit. I'm going to add in some water. Don't want this water spoon, so I'm just Alright, so I'm just going to give this a mix here. Try and dissolve some of that starter. And I think because I didn't give it enough water last night, because it does seem a little bit thick, I think this is going to take a little bit longer to rise. But that's fine because I'm just going to let it go while we go out. And maybe let it go just a little bit longer than I usually do. I don't really time anything out. I always just go by like how it looks and feels, which I think is really the best way to make sure that you're getting good bread, because that's going to tell you everything you need to know is like how it looks. I'm going to give this a mix together. I'm going to get it into like a shaky mess here, and then I will show you guys some stretching. As you can see, my kitchen is getting messier and messier. Okay, so this is, I've let it sit for probably about 30-45 minutes. We took a little quick little baby girl, and now I'm going to add some salts in there, which is like an auto lease with a little bit of water, and then that is going to, we're going to do the first stretch and fold, sorry, and this is going to be, I don't know, probably not a super hydrated dough or anything. I did a little bit of a too hydrated dough the other day, and it had a really nice crumb, but it just did not rise to the way I would have liked to. So I'm just going to kind of knead this water in here. I might add a little more, but we'll see. The flour usually is pretty absorbent. So, alright, I'm going to let this sit for another 15 minutes and we'll give it another stretch and fold in a little bit. Again, I'm not super exact on any of that. I just kind of do it as my busy life allows. So I've been letting this simmer for a little bit. I'm going to turn it up to high heat. And honestly, I might get a little bit more broth in here. And then we're going to pick this chicken really quick. It has cooled down a lot, which is really nice, to get enough for the soup for now, and then I'll pick the rest of it later. And I'll pick the other chicken that's still sitting in the Instapot on warm right now, until I'm ready to get to it. And once we pull that out of there, we will pick that chicken and keep the bones as well. And all of the broth that's remaining, I'm just gonna let it sit for about 16 hours, similar to those beef bones, because we really want it to get all of those nutrients and stuff in there. If I had planned a little bit ahead of time, I would have done bone broth for this soup too. This will still have some of those nutrients in it because we did cook the whole chicken together. And some of those bones, that nutrients in the bones, probably did seep out a little bit. But really we're going to be getting a lot more of that chicken broth flavor in here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and chop it up. My daughter's giving me a new outfit, but that's the price you pay of trying to get things done. Sometimes as a mom, you gotta pick your battles, but she seems to be having a lot of fun and she's staying safe, so that's the most we can ask for sometimes. I like big chunks of chicken in my soups, so I always just chop them up a little bit. So this kind of looks like I'm gonna throw it into the pot. And once this gets to a rolling boil, I'm going to add some of this gnocchi here. You can see I have a pretty big pile here. I'm going to freeze about half of it, and I'll put about half in the soup. It's going to be pretty chunky soup here.
So now I have it to a rolling boil, and once I had it like that, I added in the gnocchi. Now this gnocchi wasn't perfect. I really should have added a little bit more flour in it. So it became somewhere between a gnocchi and like floury potato, which sounds weird, but it was actually still really good. And that's just something that, like, when you're learning to cook from scratch, as you start to do new things, like, you're gonna have things where you're like, oh, this wasn't exactly how I expected it to turn out, but 9 times out of 10 it is still way better than something that you would have gotten from the store or a restaurant. And that was definitely the case here. We still really loved it. Now I added in about a half a cup to a cup of heavy cream. Really depends on how creamy you want it, how much you'll add here. And then I also chopped up some kale. You could also do spinach if you don't like kale. Just make sure you chop it up into smaller pieces. I think that's the key to adding any sort of wilted greens into a soup or something. You want to make sure it's into small pieces so it doesn't get kind of weird.
We are in the home stretch of everything. It is 6 o'clock. We just got home about an hour or two ago. We had a second helping of soup for dinner, and I'm just going to finish cooking all of these chickens and get the bones into the broth so that we can get that going. I still have the beef broth going over there. I'll show you guys before we end the day what that's looking like right now. I'm going to let that go overnight on low. We just want to keep getting those bones nice and cooked down in that broth to really give the nutrients and the flavor. And then my sourdough is also going. I'm letting that bulk ferment right now. Before I go to bed, I will shape it and throw it into just a regular bowl. I don't use anything special. Fancy-wise, I'll probably use that bowl for one. I'm hoping I have enough to make two for the amount that I put in there. So I'll have to find another, clean up another bowl, probably this white one here that has the chicken in there. And I'm not doing anything crazy with picking this chicken. I'm not like chopping it up or anything. Not totally sure what I'm going to use it for besides for sure the soup. So if I don't use it within another day or so, I will definitely throw all of these chicken pieces into the freezer so that it doesn't go bad.
I'm gonna take all this chicken broth, dump it right in here, and it's still piping hot because I just took it out not that long ago. You can see all the pepper from when we first put it in. I'm gonna cover this, put it on slow cook for about 16 hours, put a little bit of apple cider vinegar in here, and then we're gonna take it out when it's done. At this point, I am almost done for the night. I am just prepping and shaping my sourdough for the next morning. Now, I usually don't wait like too long to bake my sourdough, only because I just, I want to make bread and I just don't have the patience to let it ferment in my fridge. I wish I did. I wish I planned ahead a little bit more, but I'm just not in that stage of life with 2 kids, 2 and under. Now, I'm not really sure what I was doing with my shaping here. I think I was going to do one way. I kind of decided to do another. So it's kind of a little all over the place here, but really, if you just roll it up and you kind of get it into a good shape, it'll work out just fine. I am not finicky about sourdough at all, as you probably have learned from my channel if you've followed me for any length of time. Now, I just put it into a bowl with a dish towel and I kind of flip it over and I put the side that I shaped in there. Now it got a little weird here. But again, this loaf baked up just fine. I don't know. I hate all of the craziness around sourdough that seems to be too specific. Now this is the next day. This is what the beef bone broth looked like. You guys, it was beautiful. It tasted so good. So I just strained it off. I use a regular strainer. And if I have a little bit of extra time, I'll run it through a mesh strainer as well, because that'll get a little bit of the extra stuff that's kind of on there. Now, this is the sourdough loaf. I just kind of take the towel off and I put it onto parchment paper. Now, I did make this a pretty higher hydration. I didn't intend to, but I guess that's just kind of what happens when you don't measure anything, I guess. But it wasn't as bouncy or high, I guess, as I would have liked it to be, but the crumb ended up turning out really great. It was still a really good tasting dough. I totally forgot to take a video of it after I took it out of the oven because I was working and we had a new sitter and stuff. So but it did turn out really great. Now, this is the next day, and I decided that I just wasn't feeling great, and I didn't really want to, talk on the camera, so I'm just going to voice over the rest of this. But I am making some meatballs with noodles. It's going to be kind of almost like a Swedish meatball type of thing. So I put 3 pounds of ground beef and some almond flour in there. You could use breadcrumbs too. I just don't tend to keep breadcrumbs on hand, so I always kind of go to almond flour. And then I usually put in 1 egg per pound of meat when I'm making meatballs. And I put a little bit of Worcestershire sauce in there, a little bit of garlic powder, some salt and pepper, and a little bit of smoked paprika as well. And then I just went ahead and kind of mixed that all together and formed them into little meatballs. So I really like to pan fry my meatballs as opposed to baking them. I really think that it adds a lot of extra flavor to the meatballs, and it allows us to make a gravy or a sauce with all of the drippings at the end. So I just added enough meatballs to make the entire pan. I just really, again, I was feeling a little sick. I did not want to sit there and make meatballs forever. So the other half of the meatballs I actually put on a baking tray. I threw them in the freezer just to kind of flash freeze, and then I put them in a bag so that I can make them in a few weeks when I'm short on time but want to have a really good meal on the table. So I just kind of move these about until they're done. I take them out and put them on a plate once they are done cooking, which is about 10 to 15 minutes later. Again, we're going to leave all of those grease and drippings on there. Put about a quarter of a stick of butter in there. Really, measure butter with your heart as always. And then I put about a fourth or a third of a cup of flour in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and whisk that up. You want to cook it for about a minute or so that you can get the flour flavor out of there. If you add in your liquid a little bit too soon, that's where you start to get kind of that you'll kind of recognize it. It's that floury flavor where it's not totally cooked enough. And then we're going to add in our bone broth. And look how jiggly that is. That means that it is full of nutrition. I love when I end up with a jiggly bone broth. And we're going to go ahead and kind of incorporate that into our sauce. I added in a little bit more. Overall, I probably added about 2 cups of bone broth. Really, you're going to add it until you kind of get it to the thickness that you like. I wanted a thinner sauce here because we're putting it over noodles. I put in some Worcestershire sauce, and I ended up putting a little bit more later on, and a little bit of garlic powder after I tasted it, some more salt and pepper. Really, you're going to flavor it however you like it. I put in a little bit of heavy whipping cream, probably no more than a half a cup here. I wanted this to be a little bit more on the creamier side. If you don't want to add the heavy cream, you don't have to, but I do think it kind of makes a nice rich sauce. And then, sorry for the footage here, but this is the best footage that I got as far as putting the entire thing together. We had a lot of hungry people in our house, so I put the noodles together, and then I put in the meatballs into a bowl.
Okay, so I wanted to show you really quick where I keep my life back. So I had mentioned in a few videos before, and I got a few questions on it, like what I feed our baby and my toddler, and then how I kind of overcome some of that baby-led weaning stuff, where we feed them just exactly what we eat. And I had mentioned that I have the life back. So I just keep it right in this buffet here. It's right across from our kitchen, really close to our dining room. And I just keep it in the bag that it came in. I keep it in this buffet so it's ready to go if we ever, God forbid, need it. And so I just wanted to mention that that's exactly what I keep it. And I just feed our kids exactly what we eat so that they kind of get that nutrition and they don't hopefully become too picky. But toddlers go through that stage and there's only so much you can do about it. So I just wanted to mention that. If you have any questions, let me know. And I will also put a link in the description for an additional discount if that's something that you're interested in.
All right, it is Tuesday at this point, and let me tell you that cold is coming in.
Okay, so I wanted to show you really quick where I keep my life back. So I had mentioned in a few videos before, and I got a few questions on it, what I feed our baby and my toddler, and then how I kind of overcome some of that baby-led weaning stuff, where we feed them just exactly what we eat. And I had mentioned that I have the life back. So I just keep it right in this buffet here. It's right across from our kitchen, really close to our dining room. And I just keep it in the bag that it came in. I keep it in this buffet so it's ready to go if we ever, God forbid, need it. And so I just wanted to mention that that's exactly what I keep it. And I just feed our kids exactly what we eat so that they kind of get that nutrition and they don't hopefully become too picky. But toddlers go through that stage and there's only so much you can do about it. So I just wanted to mention that. If you have any questions, let me know. He's upstairs. Yeah. And I will also put a link in the description for an additional discount if that's something that you're interested in.
Hot or cold, I'm not really sure, but we are not feeling well, and I'm making a priority to make some soup. I'm going to make that chicken cream of wild rice. I'm chopping up the carrots nice and small here, and I'm going to throw them in the pot. But before I do that, I'm actually going to throw some of the chicken broth into some wild rice that I had cooked. I just followed the instructions and I threw it in there, and like, I'm looking at all that gelatinous really goodness. Okay, so here's all of the colorful carrots, putting it into the pot right now, and then I'm going to go ahead and chop up some celery. Now, I like to chop that up really small as well. I find that if I make it too big, it doesn't cook quick enough, and then I'm left with celery that is just like not the same texture as the rest of the soup, and like kind of oddly crunchy, which is not really a great texture in the soup. So I chopped those up. I probably did about 3 to 4 stalks in here. I wanted to make this as veggie heavy as I could because I really just wanted like all of the different nutrients that I could to just try and combat this cold. I sliced up a half of an onion as well, and I diced it up really finely. We want the flavor here, but we don't necessarily want the texture of the onion like showing up in the soup. So as small as you can dice it, that's what I would do to put that into the soup. Now, after that, don't forget to make sure that you save your veggie scraps. I always, put them in the freezer just like we did. We took them out of the freezer in the beginning of this video to make our soup broth. We want to make sure that we're keeping that stock, high in our freezer. And then I am going to chop up the chicken that we made as well. What's really nice about doing all the prep that we did on Sunday is that, on the weeknights, this stuff comes together really quickly, which is really nice, especially like, I was feeling really under the weather. I wanted to do as minimal as possible to get food on the table this week. So I was just so thankful for my Sunday self that I got all of this stuff together. And really that's mostly all it was. We're almost done here. It's just cooking. It's going to cook for, another 15 minutes or so, just until all of the veggies are tender or to, what you like to have them at. And then after that, I went and put a little bit of cream in there. Now, I like a creamy soup. You could skip this if you still want, more of a brothy soup, but totally up to you. And then I also shredded some Parmesan cheese. I wanted it to be a little bit cheesy and nutty, so I did that, but you could skip that too. It's really up to you. You could just do the cream and skip the Parmesan, or, however you want to do it. But it's turned out so dang good and definitely going to be in the rotation on the regular.
All right, so it is Thursday night. I'm going to make some pizza, and this is like one of my favorite things to put together really easily. If I haven't planned ahead, which I haven't tonight, I'm going to just make a regular yeast pizza. If I think about it ahead of time, at least 6 or so hours ahead of time, then I will make a sourdough pizza crust because it'll allow it the time to kind of ferment a little bit. So this will usually rise enough for me to bake it. This will usually rise enough for me to bake it within about 30 minutes or so. So I'm just going to do 2 tablespoons of yeast in here. I microwave some water for about a minute to get it a little bit warm. That'll allow the yeast to rise a little bit quicker. And then all I also put in there is flour. And again, measure with your heart. And the more you work with a lot of this stuff, if you want recipes, you can always find them online. So if you see me do something and you don't feel comfortable just kind of winging it, you can find recipes for all of these things online really easily. And then I put a little bit of oil in there too. If I have avocado oil, I use that. I don't have it on hand, so I'm just going to use a little bit of peanut oil. It'll work just the same. And I'm going to go ahead and mix this for a couple of minutes. It'll come together. Ooh, I want to put some salt in there too. So I'll put a little bit of salt in there too. And give it a mix. Oh, plug it in. That up. And this is what it's kind of looking like as it gets put together. So I'm going to let it knead, get a little bit of gluten, and then I'm going to let it rest for about 30 minutes or so.
All right, so it had been about 30 minutes at this point, and it rose pretty well, and so I'm going to cut it in half. I usually do about 2 pizza doughs, but if I really wanted to roll these out thin, I could probably do 3. But we like a thicker, kind of somewhere in the middle pizza dough, but I do love a crispy crust if I can. So I'm just gonna roll these out on a rolling pin. I know that some people who are pizza snobs or whatever, they're gonna be cringing that I'm not hand tossing this or whatever. whatever. But let me tell you, as a busy mom, that's what gets the job done. And so that's what I do. So I am taking my cast iron out of a preheated oven of 450. I just let it sit in there as the oven comes up to temperature. And I always make my dough just a little bit bigger than my cast iron, and I roll up the sides. Now, this is pizza sauce that we canned earlier in the year, and so I'm just putting that on there. What I used to do before we canned pizza sauce is I actually just took plain tomato sauce from the store and then put pizza seasoning on there. And this is fresh mozzarella. Now, I honestly do prefer using a shredded block of mozzarella, but I will say that it is so much more convenient to use the pre-sliced, so I do that. And then we usually just do pepperoni pizza. If I'm trying to use up leftovers, I'll also usually make like fun different pizzas, but this turned out so good. And we did do a few other meals later in the week, but we were honestly just using mostly leftovers and nothing really crazy. We made some quesadillas on Friday and some burritos with leftover meat on Saturday. But I hope this gave you guys some great ideas for throughout the week. If you enjoy this video, please give me a subscription and go ahead and share with your friends because I really truly appreciate it.